Good afternoon, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining us in this powerful educational Lunch and Learn. My name is Patricia Houston, and I just want to remind you that this Lunch and Learn is brought to you by Family Partners of Morris and Sussex counties. The topic for today is brought to you by the Mental Health Association and the NJ4S. And with that, I would like to introduce you to our wonderful speakers, Jonathan Hikings and Natasha Van Dyke. Welcome both.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you, and we're happy to be here. I'm going to start sharing my screen in just a bit, just so that everybody is looking at the same thing that we're looking at here. Just to repeat something that we were just talking about before the recording started, for anybody who is in attendance today, please feel free to stop us in the middle of the presentation to bring up anything that your experiences, your questions, your concerns. I certainly don't plan on solving all the problems that social media brings to the table today, but we're going to do our best to cover some of the basics, and we're going to do our best to bring out some resources. Again, we're from the Mental Health Association. We're not social media experts. Well, we're approaching this from a mental health perspective, and we're approaching the pros and cons of social media use, because quite frankly, it is very much a tool that people can use to better their mental health, but also we want to make sure that people are alerted to the potential dangers of misuse of social media. So I'm going to share my screen, if you don't mind, just bear with me for just a moment.
Wonderful. And while Jonathan is doing that, I just want to remind you that this Lunch and Learn is being recorded, and other contact information in relation to website, phone number, anything that you need to know about this presentation, all of that is going to be in the description box below this video.
Okay. So I'm hoping everybody can see my screen at this point. This is your our starting point here. As you can tell, we're from the NJ4S program, and today's session is about teens, screens, and social media. We've subtexted this as the Addressing Mental Health in the Digital Age. And the only other time we presented this, we were talking about whether digital age is still the appropriate term. I think we were moving towards it feels like it's been the digital age for decades now, and that's perhaps not the relevant term. I certainly think the virtual age is a little bit more descriptive, as we seem to be managing multiple existences, both a virtual existence and I'll use finger quotations, real life existence simultaneously. And I don't think that's accounted for in just reporting the digital age. Also, I think the age that we're in right now, I don't want to get too negative into it. I want to focus on the positives here as much as possible. But we're talking about also the end of privacy. We're talking about the potential end of privacy, or as we weigh out the pros and cons and the balance between having our privacy and also having convenience and access to all these wonderful things that social media gives us access to. So that opens up a whole area of things that I'm absolutely fascinated in, and I feel like I could talk for about 6 hours on our loss of privacy. But today we're going to be focusing a little bit more on teens and then social media use and what's healthy use of media. So let me introduce myself as Jonathan Hingis. I'm one of the prevention consultants here at Mental Health Association's New Jersey 4S Hub. And here with me today,
my name is Natasha, and I'm also a prevention consultant with NJ4S.
And I'm very happy to have Natasha here. So I'm trying to scroll through my screen here for just a second. Let's see what's going on here. So the next screen, when I eventually get to it, there we go. The next screen is a little bit about NJ4S. I do want to introduce us as, if you've never heard of NJ4S before, this is the statewide Students Support Services Program. We are funded by the state of New Jersey through the Department of Children and Families. There are 15 other hubs, what they're calling hubs of NJ4S programs that cover all 21 New Jersey counties. So the NJ4S hub that's presenting here today covers both Morris and Sussex counties, and they call the other these hubs are covering vicinages, which mark up with excuse me, about the juvenile justice vicinages as well too. I think that's the overlap here. So 15 vicinages covering 21 counties in New Jersey. And let's see what we do. We are a new and innovative approach to mental health as we're looking at more upstream approaches. I've been working in mental health with an adult population for the past 25 years, and I was excited to be able to move over to this approach, which is really upstream in the sense that we're approaching youth perhaps before they are they're dealing with their mental health stressors, their mental health issues. So what we do is in a prevention model. We do community prevention education workshops such as this one, where we're talking in general about social problems and how it impacts mental health. We also do prevention programming, which will be more specific curricula, evidence-based practices, oftentimes, most of the time, I should say, going into schools and making sure that we're doing, that we're directly approaching youth and giving them the tools to hopefully avoid potential stressors and things that may cause or make them more likely to express symptoms of mental health issues and in their future. As you know, I think that we were looking at an interesting statistic about how 50% of people who do end up having mental health issues are experiencing symptoms by the age of 14. So this is it's a very primed time of life for being aware of mental health issues. The last thing, or I should say one of the last things that we do is we have access to counselors here. We have access to clinicians who can provide brief and time-framed and targeted case management, or excuse me, clinical services for students who are identified by their schools as needing extra support. Anybody who has any experience with finding providers for long-term services may be aware that it's sometimes really difficult to find somebody to provide that service right away. So we're meant as a kind of a fill in the gaps effort in order to get people to the point where they can receive those clinical services on a long-term basis. And our clinicians who are in the room behind me right now, perhaps you could even hear them from time to time, are serving dozens of individual students in the Morris and Sussex counties right now. And those numbers just continue to grow as we get more and more referrals. Again, we are a new program. This is the first school year that we're operating, so we expect to get a lot more well-known and have a lot more presentations moving forward.
Okay, guys. So today we're going to talk about negative and positive factors to social media. And our agenda for today, we're going to go into topics as mental health, social media, benefits and risks, safety tips, setting healthy limits, supporting safe places. And we're going to give you some resources as well. We have content warning. We're going to be discussing sensitive topics that may bring up strong emotions. We're going to talk about things like depression, anxiety, eating disorder. We're going to talk about addiction, misuse, and cyberbullying. At any time you feel like it's too much for you, please excuse yourself. Also, if you want to talk to us in private, you can ask us questions after the presentation.
Oops, sorry about that. Just bear with me. Okay.
All right, so we want to talk about the difference between mental health and mental illness. Mental health, we look at it to be like physical health, right? It's something we all deal with. We may need a mental health day. You may need a mental health break. So that's something everyone has. Mental illness is something that would be diagnosed by a mental health provider. And with mental illness, it could affect us with our school, our home life, friendships. It could affect our thinking, our feeling, our behaviors, and our moods. All right, so we want to do a self-check-in. Us as adults, how often do we use social media? How important is social media to us, right? So before we think about the youth, we think about us as adults. I know as for me, TikTok is something I use all the time. I use it for meal prepping, video guides to work out. I use it to help me schedule vacation, places I could go on vacation. If we're doing that all the time, what do we think the youth are doing? Like, they was born into a social media era. This was something we learned as we got older, teenagers, early adults. If we're using it all the time, we have to think the youth is using it as well. So that's like a check-in we could do before we start talking to our youth. How important is it to us?
How have you been doing on your use of social media? I've used it today. I ask our audience as well too. Have you been using it today?
I woke up to it.
That's usually the routine. I go to, it's the last thing I do before I go to sleep, and it's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning. I think that was the definition of being in love with somebody at one time, if you're thinking about them. But so yeah, this is the relationship we have with social media. There are benefits, and I do want to highlight these as much as possible. We have the access to communication. If anybody's been separated from their family and their friends, the ability to stay in touch over long distances, and to be able to meet and stay and have those communication at any given time of day is really, let's put this in frame it in the best way possible. This is really the primary goal of social media, is maintaining those connections over time. I know that we have some people in our audience today who have really great stories about staying in communication, and I want to encourage people to share those stories if they feel comfortable talking about it today. In terms of community, I do want to stress that we're fortunate living where we live, that we have access to diverse communities pretty much throughout the state of New Jersey. But there may be situations where an individual is part of a community and they do not feel that they're represented in their locality, where they happen to be. I'm thinking specifically of LGBTQIA plus community right now, and it is very important to recognize that not everybody sees themselves represented in the community that they're in, and social media allows people to find their culture, find their those who represent them, and communicate with them, or just be part of that. Just be a part of the community. So that's a tremendous benefit, and again, bringing people together. This is we'll continuously notice the difference between the benefits of social media bringing people together and the deficits where it's really tearing people apart and making people separating them. In terms of expression, we're talking about artistic expression mostly here. We have I know I have musician friends of mine who utilize social media to get they're now able to access listeners in the case of music, or eyeballs in the case of the visual arts, that they would not have been able to access before. This has leveled the playing field of artistic expression. You know, we have people that have become superstars as a result of their actions on social media. They've been discovered perhaps through social media, and that's just a really impressive use of social media. So we want to stress that as well too. In terms of entertainment.
Jonathan, can I just interrupt? I was going to say, I think something of huge benefit is now social media is used for employment purposes. We have people who are content creators, people who are using social media to, gain financial, financial gains, let's say, and they're really making money off of being online on all of these different platforms. And I think that's a huge benefit. I mean, it's not your traditional, employment anymore. And it's a big influence for the generations that are coming up, right? They see the ability to be able to make money on social media. So content creators are a big piece right now to, all of this.
That's a really good point. And that encapsulates actually both the positive and negative side too. And maybe I have a negative reaction to when I hear, you had mentioned the word influence, but like influencers, I had mentioned, you had mentioned people who have been able to monetize their lifestyles in such a way that it is a moneymaker. That's on one far side of things, and I'm always a little bit cautious about when I hear youth talking about their goals being in the influencing sphere. It always, maybe it's because of the generation that I grew up in that it throws me back a little bit. But on the other side, we look at social media. I mean, it's absolutely a utility. It's utilitarian in that you can't compete in a job market without being part of social media to some extent. But it's very much on par with utilities. Without access to it, you are not living the same type of lifestyle as everybody else. And we're going to go into that a little bit through this presentation. But thank you so much for bringing that up. I think that's that's accurate. That is absolutely accurate and on point. So lastly, the benefit, which is what we're all doing on social media, is for entertainment purposes here. We're indulging in the content that we enjoy. It is a stress reduction. There are many ways that we are going to talk about the negatives of social media and how they will cause us stress and it would feel worse about ourselves. But just as many aspects of it that have these negative connotations, there's the positive parts. So there's so much mindfulness apps. There's ways to do meditation utilizing your social media. There's people you could follow with such positive content and be able to follow along with just about anybody in the world with any positive message that you can possibly imagine. So the benefits are really limitless, and I stand in awe of what social media has brought to us in such a short amount of time. So yes, we do have to get into the negative consequences, and we're going to expand on each of these a little bit. But comparison, particularly dangerous. We talked about, two quotes that we want to bring up. We'll save the FDR quote for just a little bit later. But we did want to talk about, I have a client of mine who, anytime he was comparing himself to what he was seeing on social media, this is a youth, and he was saying that he's experiencing life as his own blooper reel while he's watching everybody else's highlight reel on social media. And for him, that was such an isolating observation for him. He knew it. I mean, he knew that people were having bad days. They just weren't showing that stuff on their social media. So he could conceptualize and intellectualize that. But what he was seeing was making his depression so much worse, just because he was exposed to all this false positivity, if I can put it in those terms. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. Addiction and misuse. We had given a lot of thought about how we were going to use these words about abuse, misuse, addiction. Our colleagues were actually weighing in pretty heavily on using the term misuse, because it's really what it comes down to. Is these things that are not net positive or net negative. It's just about how you're using them, and when the balance is thrown out of whack, that's when they seem to be have the most negative consequences. Fear of missing out, FOMO. I am constantly feeling this. Constantly, it's happening right now. I am very much aware that, and it is elevated to the nth degree for our youth. They are navigating lives more so on social media, more in the virtual sphere than I am, certainly. And that's not just a generational thing. I guess that's a personal choice thing as well too. But there's always that feeling of what's going on out there. What do I have to be exposed to? What do I have to be? What do I have to have in my my repertoire, essentially, in order to feel like I'm able to compete in the social sphere? And cyberbullying, of course, where we may end up having a conversation about harassment, intimidation, and bullying throughout the course of this as well. But cyberbullying has had a tremendous impact, and we're going to have to. I assume we're going to have to talk about that in just a little bit. This one, me too. All right, so yeah, I did talk about comparison. I promised you an FDR quote. So I think he said that comparison is the thief of joy. And that just rings true. Anytime that you're comparing your life to what you're seeing around you, you're not living your life to its fullest potential. Comparison is particularly invasive, and it is going to cause a negative impact for females. This has been shown in studies that females developing body image dissatisfaction, body dysmorphia, as a result of the comparative aspect and the comparative nature of social media. These often lead to poor eating habits, or indeed anorexia, bulimia, or other eating disorders, poor self-esteem, poor self-image, very unrealistic expectations, and peer pressure. And again, these things are not new. That's not like these didn't exist before social media. Advertising perhaps was advertising in any form was always causing these comparative and disproportionate representations of reality. So it's not new, but it has been exacerbated tremendously with the advent of social media. Let's see. So according to the Surgeon General, teens who spend more than 3 hours per day on social media face double the risk of poor mental health outcomes. It's mostly including symptoms of depression, anxiety. That's an extremely alarming fact. That is, again, we were talking about this before. My phone, all of our phones are telling us how much social media we're using on a daily basis. And there's not a day that goes by that I'm not surprised to the degree of shock about how much social media I'm actually engaging in, and it's something I'm actively working on. But every single day, anytime I'm looking at those totals that my phone is calculating for me, it's remarkable. It's absolutely it's invidious. It's a real problem for me, and I know for our youth, it's elevated to that degree, to such a high degree. So we have another statistic: 70% of teens and young adults in the U.S. are experiencing social media addiction or misuse. Alarming rates.
The fear of missing out, right? So I think with the fear of missing out, sometimes the youth may feel like lonely, depressed. They like emotions may go down. The fear of missing out can lead to social media addictions, that's misuse, because now you feel like you want to be on it all the time. So they increase their feelings of loneliness and isolation. And like with that could come with like an example. Let's say a youth may have an early curfew, or their friends could stay out later. So now they're on social media looking at what their friends doing. They may went to the football game, the basketball game. After the game, everyone got together. So you're now on your phone or you're on your tablet, and you're like, God, I missed out on all this. Now you're sad. Now you're feeling down. So that comes in with the fear of missing out, because it's like, I'm addicted to seeing everything you're doing because I can't be a part of it.
Right. It's a need. It's an absolute need. I've seen it with the youth in my life. They'll take any given opportunity to go check in on what's going on. I mean, we just didn't have that kind of access to friends or anything. It's like having a sleepover every single night of the year. I mean, it's really, really a potentially dangerous situation if it's not monitored in some way. Cyberbullying. We are going to have to talk about this one. Let's define it first. This would be posting inappropriate or private pictures of someone else, and in some cases of yourself, actually. But we'll save that for another time. But tagging someone in a hurtful post or commenting hurtful things under a post. Another form of cyberbullying, texting negative things about someone and sharing hurtful content. So students are exposed to this on a regular basis, on a daily basis. I had some interesting statistics about about bullying and what proportion of it we're now being in the cyberbullying realm. And I'll have to find those statistics again, but I know it's been growing in instances every single year. The schools are talking about it. It's a major part of the harassment, intimidation, and bullying education that we have to do. One of the things I did want to stress about this slide specifically is that we all have, hopefully, we have this image of the youth that are involved in our lives, and we want them to be safe in all of their social media and daily life, essentially. Of course. And if they were the victim of cyberbullying or bullying in any way, we would want to give them all the help that they can. But the other side of this also is being aware and being that how easy it is to be perhaps part of the problem, and that youth that we feel a fondness for and connection to can very easily cross over and be it's not as simple as there's a bully and a victim. There is a growing amount of evidence to show that there are multiple roles. We do a session about bullying in the schools, where we talk about HIB, and we talk about the other roles that are present besides the victim and the bully. It's just not that simple anymore. So we have the person who's the outsider, we have the person who's the assister, and what we're trying to do is encourage as many people as possible, as many youth as possible, to step up and join the realms of the upstander. Or what's the other term that we're calling? I know some schools are calling them upstanders, some are calling them
And that's the one I can remember.
yeah, that's okay. Yeah, upstander certainly makes sense. But there's also the reinforcer role. There's a whole bunch of roles where kids are not just either a victim, an innocent victim, or they're the bully in the situation. There's plenty of other roles, and as you're probably aware, we have a lot of professionals on the presentation today. Is people who are victims of bullying in one form or another, or also perhaps likely at one time to play the other role, or because they've learned that behavior, utilize bullying habits, and will take on that role against someone who is perceived to be weaker than they are. So this is a whole, there's so much to talk about within the cyberbullying realm. I'm going to try to keep it short here so that we can get to all of our slides, but this is something we could definitely come back. We could do a whole presentation on cyberbullying. So some things to consider. The Surgeon General has advised that restricting social media use for youth under 13 years of age. So again, this is a recommendation from the Surgeon General. I understand that families do what works for them, essentially. I know plenty of families who are strict about not using it and are having that conversation about when would be an appropriate time. But really what it comes down to is what works for you in your home. The recommendation, of course, is that for people who are just starting out with access to and are novices who are not used to having a social media presence, is that parents or some trusted adult be with them for supervised use of social media for 30 minutes of use per day. I know how fast 30 minutes of social media exposure goes, and I know how perhaps that sounds unrealistic, but we're talking about this is a ripe age for influence, and it's really important to make sure that their exposure to what's on the internet is in some way mitigated, because it's the Wild West out there in terms of what's on social media. You can be exposed to just about anything. So being able to have a trusted adult to have a conversation with is really just so important.
Excessive social media use, right? What can it lead to? Being overly concerned about social media, driven by an uncontrollable urge to log on to or use social media and devote into so much time and effort to social media that it impairs other important life areas. Social media have become our norm. It's something that we're so used to, we do all the time. It's easy to adapt to social media. It's like a part of our daily living, right? So we wake up in the morning, we're on social media. We go to bed at night, we're on social media. Throughout the day, we're going on social media. And we're doing that, and that could lead to like poor grades, poor work performance, interested hobbies. Nowadays, it's hard to get kids out the house. All they want to do is be on a tablet. They don't want to be on the track team. They don't want to go to the park. When I say let's go to the park, my nieces and I'm looking at me like, the park, what's that? So this is some of the things social media can lead to. When we was growing up, it was like different. We wanted to be outside. We wasn't thinking about a computer. We wasn't even worried about our phone. I don't even think our phone had nothing on it. It was like a flip phone, and all we could do was basically call our parents. So it's different. So it can lead to things like that.
Yeah. I see groups of youth out in the community, and they've all got their devices. They're all engaging in social media, even though their friends are right around them too. It is the lifestyle. It is they're navigating two lives simultaneously, at least two lives simultaneously. It's really remarkable to watch, and we have to be aware of the dangers. So increasing rates of depression, we have to some degree account for the isolation that was felt post-pandemic or during the pandemic and now post-pandemic, as we're still, I don't know if we would have had as many virtual meetings as we have right now if it weren't for the pandemic in the first place. But we'd have noticed that the studies show that depression rates are highly gendered, that younger teenage girls are impacted more. In fact, in a study between 2017 and 2023, the conclusions were that 1 in 5 teenage girls between the ages of 12 and 17 experienced a major depressive episode, 1 in 5. In 2021, that 3 in 5 teenage girls felt persistent sadness, and this was double the rates of boys. It's bad enough with our male youth, and it's double that for females. Also in 2021, 25% of girls had made a suicide plan. These numbers are off the charts. These numbers are very alarming, and action needs to be taken. And where is that action going to come from, if not from families and parents? And it's a difficult job right now, but we have to be resources for each other, and we have to be able to share these resources that are available to us.
Mental health risk. We see here 40% of adolescents age 13 to 17 said social media make them feel worse. 40% said it's neither better or worse. Only 14% said they felt better. So we see 80% of youth is having a negative feeling or a neutral feeling. They're dealing with a lot of social media, a lot of technology throughout the day. Even if we go in the picture, we see it become overwhelming. They're trying to keep up with Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, other things, YouTube. And we talked about content creators, right? Influencer. So it's like, I want to pose, I want to get up there. We're showing them like the new thing of life is internet. Everything should be on the internet. And it's not so good to their mental health. It's not something upbringing. So that's a negative factor we have to think about. We're trying to bring it. You could be a content creator, and this could bring money your way, and this could make you popular, but we're taking out the tradition that we was raised in when we was kids. So maybe we need to start thinking of other things.
Yeah, those statistics really did alarm me quite a bit. I did not expect to see that many with either neutral or negative response to social media. My gut response was going to be that that youth were fully on board with, yes, this makes our lives better, but I didn't realize they would have that kind of insight into the fact that there's a negative aspect to it. So in a way, I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed with adolescents' ability to recognize that.
Yeah. We have a quote here. It says, the answer is not to totally stop using or get rid of social media, but rather to be aware of how it impacts us and be mindful of how we use it, right? So we know it's unrealistic for youth to completely stop using social media, right? They're using Chromebooks in school. They have their tablet. They have their laptop. They have different things, so they're using it throughout the day, even at home. We just maybe want to do breaks. Maybe want to, let's sit down and have a conversation with our kids. Let's ask them how the school day was going. We just want to do different things so we could back up a little bit of time from the social media. We don't want that to be a 24/7 thing. So we have 2 slides that we're going to talk about some tips and tricks for mindful social media. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to read a couple of them. And I know on this slide, I really thought about find the balance. So we want to find a healthy balance. Maybe it is great to do the content creator. Maybe we want to show positive things. But along the way, sometimes it become a lot. I know, like for me, when I'm looking at gym videos, I'm like, well, how their body look like this? How they look so skinny? They doing this. So it could be a lot. So you want to find a balance, some healthiness with it. Also, again, as we talked about the last slide, you want to take healthy breaks. So maybe all day today, I'm not going to touch my phone. Well, maybe you tell your kid, okay, you have your phone at school, but when you come home, maybe we drop it at the bed and we do family things without the social media. So the next slide, I really like what it say, update your private settings. It then said encourage your child to talk to a trusted adult. So talking to a trusted adult is very important. We want to let our kids know they could talk to us or a teacher at school, a counselor, an aunt, an uncle, or someone that they feel is an adult and they could trust them. And we want to make sure that we're not judging them, that we're allowing them to talk to us and we're there and we're engaging in a conversation. This stuff is important because social media, sometimes to us, it gets to us. We have to think what it's doing to our youth. So we want to be that trusted adult for them.
Those are some good tips and tricks. If anybody has anything they wanted to add, please, we're all ears. We're all looking for the next possible thing, but we're really talking about imposing some limit settings, some boundaries, and to not let social media take over the entirety of your existence. It's not easy to do. It's really hard to incentivize being offline, engaging with people who are right around you. But that's really what it comes down to. How do we incentivize? How do we make it clear that it's healthier for and the desired response to be offline for a little while and engaging in life? Oh, so when the rules are broken, and they will inevitably be broken, it seems. But we wanted to have a real conversation about this as well too. As Natasha had said in one of the previous slides, it's perhaps not it's not realistic to say we're going to go take your social media access away from you completely. I do understand that there are some circumstances where that might be necessary. Certainly egregious, circumstances are, there's no shortage of examples of them, but there's certainly no, it should be used as a last resort, I guess, is what we're trying to say. It'd be really important to communicate if there is any limitation or if there is any restriction from use of social media, that it is very clear about the length of period of time that that person's going to be restricted and what exactly they need to do in order to earn that right back again, to earn the right to go and use social media. We had talked about as a team here, which apps are more high risk, usually because they are well, it's easier to, quite frankly, it's easier to cover your tracks as a youth. If you are able to post things that supposedly disappear, and they're difficult for a parent or a caregiver or a trusted adult to monitor what the posts have been, that's going to be an app that there's more likelihood for abusive behaviors, for misuse of that app. So Snapchat and TikTok are the main offenders here in terms of safety. But again, we do want to stress that we've used this analogy a couple of times now in the presentation, that this is a utility. So taking away, I mean, it's like taking away somebody's access to electricity or the ability to cook with gas in their homes or something like that. These things are necessary to a youth's life, their lifestyle. And yeah, can you live without social media? Absolutely, it's physically possible. Can I live without electricity? Also possible, but I don't really want to do that. I don't want to live without being able to cook in my kitchen or anything like that either. So these things have reached the point of being utilities at this point, and to take that away from somebody completely is perhaps not realistic and may be damaging to them in the long term. We want to make sure that they do have the ability to communicate with friends, that they don't feel like they're completely isolated, and where a mental health issue can thrive at that point. There are protective apps. We had talked about the example of an app called Canopy, which I would recommend any parent looking into. But essentially, it acts as there's actually multiple functionalities to it, but for postings and for receiving information on a youth's phone, as well as for searches on search engines. It's a filter, and also it has a feature where essentially it will recognize potentially inappropriate content It'll ask the youth if they really want to send what they're sending, and then it'll go to the parent for approval to send. So at least it's really making sure that these conversations, we're going to talk about active listening conversations in just a little bit, but it's really making sure the conversations are happening before exposure and overexposure takes place.
Okay, active listening, right? So we talked about this, but we was talking about a trusted adult. So with active listening, it's the tool to improve communication with your child. It lets your child know that you are interested in what they have to say and what they say is important. So with active listening, as we said earlier, you want to give them your full attention. You want to be engaging in a conversation. You want them to know that your main focus on them, and that is and that's your main factor. And also, again, one more time, you don't want to be judgmental. You do not want to jump to conclusions. You want your youth to feel comfortable so they can open up to you and say anything to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that. Anybody who's familiar with motivational interviewing techniques or anything like that, and stages of change and all these concepts, it is very important that we recognize that we have to let the action of change come to us sometimes, and to resist the urge to get into problem-solving mode. I can understand fully as a parent how it would be the impulse to see a problem or to hear that your own child is being potentially bullied or victimized in some sort of way, and to run to, I'm going to solve this problem in the way that I know how. But as much as possible, it's encouraged in the active listening and the motivational interviewing model to let the youth problem solve and come to you with potential solutions. So we just wanted to make that point. Is this one me? Boundaries and limitations. Okay, so developing a balance between your boundaries and your expectations while respecting your child's privacy. This goes into the question of to follow or not to follow on social media. This is an individual household solution to a problem that is all over. The question that should be asked at any time is, what is your ultimate goal? Are you interested in, I understand safety is probably the ultimate goal whenever we're talking about youth and we're talking about our own children. But realistically, how much do you think that you're able to provide that safety by being an unlabeled observer, by joining, by following? These are all questions that are really difficult to answer, and you really have to just be aware of what your motivations are and realistic about whether or not your actions are actually going to have the impact that you expect them to have. Youth have throughout time have been really good about getting around the observations and the oversight that their parents have imposed upon them, and there's plenty of ways for them to do it now. There's apps that exist specifically for it, so they can have multiple identities online. They could be utilizing other devices that you're not aware of. It's endless. It really is endless. So just be aware that you do have limitations as a parent, and to just try to establish as strong boundaries for your youth as possible, so that they're making proper decisions, that they're the ones who are the arbiters of what's right for them and what's appropriate for them. That's a big ask, I know, but that's the best case scenario.
Social media family edition. So the main thing is to make sure you engage with your youth. Encourage them to balance family time and discuss positive and interesting things that happen throughout their day.
One of the things I did want to say about there, it brought up using fun rules, establishing a game night, or is perhaps, and we were talking about incentivizing not using social media. So let's say establishing a game night, first of all, if you don't have one, but also if somebody's checking their phone or checking their social media in the middle of the game, to kind of cause, with a within-game penalty perhaps is imposed upon that person. Or if you don't like the thought of a punishment, but have the person who has spent the least amount of time on social media for that week maybe choose where the family goes to eat the next time that you have a meal out or something like that. Also sharing things like the positives that they're able to find on social media. Have that conversation and say, listen, what was the most inspiring post that you saw today? Bring that to the table. Have their experiences online be brought to you so that you can have those conversations with them and mitigate any negative consequences.
So fill your feet with. I guess this is very important. What Jonathan talked about, do we want to follow our youth or do we not want to follow our youth? We want to lead by example because for the most part, sometimes parents do allow their youth to follow them. So we want to lead by example. We want to make sure we have positivities on our new feed. We want to make sure maybe you put something like positive affirmation, positive word. You want to maybe put some positive self-care. I know, like for me, like I said, I use social media a lot, but my first social media post for the day is always positive. I have like my nieces following me, and they're 20 and they're 15. So I want them to see that it's not always about my nice clothes and vacations. You want to show them something positive. So you want to make sure your news feed and your social media is something they can look at. Even with you, we have family members follow us. And I know, like my sister, I think I was laughing, like a couple of my niece friends follow her. So I'm like, oh, you really can't post nothing on your social media. You have kids on your page. You want to make sure you're showing, you lead by example. So be mindful of what you're posting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'd like to share some resources with you here. The Mental Health Association has a program and called Team Connect. You can see the information here. And I just want to stress that this is a program that is not necessarily for a crisis only, but there can be a whole wide range of why people would want to reach out to Team Connect, but it is run by youth for youth. So we have trained individuals between the ages of 18 to 24. They are youth, and they have been gone through some training, and they are able to provide some positive feedback. And we just want to make sure that everybody's aware of this. Of course, I'm sure everybody's aware of 988 as a crisis hotline as well too. There are some others listed as well here. There's the Trevor Project, which is for LGBTQ youth. And we have there are apps. I'm hesitant to list too many of them because there's always updates and new ones coming out. But there's something called the Not Okay app that I just want to briefly talk about, where essentially it's about having the conversation before it becomes a crisis. And if a youth is able to identify who the individuals are in their life, who are their problem solvers, the ones who help them through difficult times, this app assists you with identifying all those individuals. And then that makes, when crisis mode happens, getting that help as simple as a touch of a button. And basically it alerts all your support network that, listen, I'm not doing okay. There's location, a location finder aspect of that app as well too, so they know exactly where you are. And this takes all the guesswork out of out of a youth not knowing when to ask for help. I mean, if the app is on their phone, you press a button and an alert comes to you. I think there's a few apps that work along the same concept essentially. They've got your, I think it's Got Your Back app, or also it works along that as well. They also have in-app things to help you relax, mindfulness exercises, and just really helpful. I mean, again, we've run the full gamut here during this presentation today about the negative aspects. I kept it to a minimum on the negatives because yeah, I do want to stress that with all the nightmare scenarios are of people looking to take advantage of other people, there's also the overarching scary aspect of social media that is the profit motive. That is the fact that every single smart device in your home, or the ones that you're carrying around in your pocket, is essentially a surveillance device, and somebody is benefiting from access to your information. Somebody's benefiting from the fact that your eyeballs are on a certain page, and that there are algorithms that are in place that are meant to tweak your responses and manipulate your behavior so that you get involved. Sometimes it's hate-filled involvement, sometimes it's positive involvement, but either way, the net result is if it's a free app, the user is the product. So it's something to be very much in mind about, and I just wanted to. I can. That's a subject that I could talk for several hours about, but we won't go too heavily into that. But at this point, I do want to thank everyone who was able to attend. And in person, or if you're watching this in future time, thank you for your time and for your attention. And I would really like to open it up to the group here. We do have some attendees, and see if anybody had any comments, questions.
Jonathan and Natasha, before we go
Yes.
to our Q&A session, I just want to thank you both again for coming here and doing this amazing presentation. And I also want to remind everybody that the contact information website and the description of the presentation is going to be in the description box below the video. So that video is going to be posted in the YouTube channel, Family Partners of Morris and Sussex Counties.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And did you want to talk about the survey?
So we do have a survey up. We would love you guys to give us feedback on how this presentation went, how was this topic, if it's any other topics. As Jonathan said earlier, we are a new program. We do go into the school system, but we also come into the community. So anywhere you would like us to come do a presentation, you can put that on the survey and we could come. We do Zoom, we do in person. We just really would love your feedback.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Patricia, we just wanted to thank you again for making this available to us as well, and for opening up your participants and giving us the opportunity to speak here today.
Now, thank you to you, because honestly, when I reached out to you guys were like, okay, sign me in. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, we thought I really thought that we were going to keeping it close to a half an hour. I didn't realize how far over we went. So my apologies for that. But yeah, again, there's so much information out there, and there's so many topics within this topic that we can get lost in and discuss for hours. And that's really what I love most about doing these presentations, is hearing other people's experiences and feedback as well too.
I just want to add that I'm going to turn off the recorder in case if someone might want to ask any question. And like I said, the Q&A part is not recorded. So I'm just going to turn off the recorder. Thank you.
Thank you.